Hi, it's Terry Cooke. You're watching Hamilton's Vital Signs. We are back, and today we're going to talk a little bit about arts renaissance in Hamilton and so many things that are happening. We've talked on this show about the restoration of two great old theaters, the Westdale and the Playhouse. Talked about film shoots in Hamilton, lots about the music scene, Supercrawl, and other great events that have lent vibrancy. What we haven't talked about is community theater, and that too is a critical part of building community theater, making it a place that you want to live in and providing numerous opportunities to both perform and to build community. So it's my pleasure to introduce two guests who know a whole lot about the subject matter at hand. I'm going to start with Corrie Giles, who's a retired educator, a transplanted Brit, and has been heavily involved with Village Theatre in Waterdown. Welcome.
Thank you, Terry.
Am I still as popular in Waterdown post-amalgamation as I was pre? I just need to test that.
I think it's best to avoid political issues in Hamilton.
And Lyla Miklos, speaking of politics, a recent candidate in my old stomping grounds of Ward 1, community activist, a creative education worker, somebody who has been involved in a whole bunch of things, and you're also a broadcaster who often talks about this very subject. So I'm going to start by putting both of you on the spot. Tell us a little bit about biographical detail, how you came to be involved in community theater, and a little bit of the flavor of the experiences that you've had over the course of in both cases, long tenured commitments to this important part of the community. And I'm going to put you on the spot first.
Here, I was going to pass it to Corrie. Okay. So I moved to Hamilton in '82, and when I was at Linden Park, Miss Soonerine, my music teacher, had me singing in the choir. And then once I got to Hill Park High School, Bill Cooke was the drama teacher there, and then I was on stage doing musicals, and I did the Theatre Aquarius summer school program under Lou Zamprogna, and did more theater, and then I was doing community theater with Hamilton Theatre Inc. and the Players Guild, and Drury Lane and Theatre Ancaster, so had my toes in quite a few different stages here in Hamilton over the years.
And still have.
Still do, and when I'm not on stage, I have people who are on stage on my radio show, Center Stage, on 101.5 FM, The Hawk, Mohawk College's campus radio station.
Fantastic. Same question to you.
Well, I think it's a similar answer in a way, all down to a dedicated teacher at high school, whose name, ironically, was Giles.
I'll be done.
And he talent spotted me, I guess, to perform in 3 school plays. One was to be the king in Iolanthe, one was an Alec Akeborn that I can't remember what it was, and the third one was Oh, What a Lovely War.
I've done that show myself.
And it's a great show. And then, ironically, later on in life, that same teacher wrote me the reference that got me into Teachers College. And I became a teacher and administrator and a professor in England. And I emigrated away from the Blessed Margaret in 1992 and came here with my then Canadian wife and got involved in education here, retired 3 years ago. But I got involved with Village Theatre in Waterdown 10 years ago as pre-retirement planning, and very quickly got sucked onto the board, was president for 4.5 years, and retired from the presidency about a year ago. So that's my very brief history.
But you may not be done forever.
Oh, no. We have a two-tier administrative structure. We have an executive and we have a board, and the executive runs day to day, and the board is supposed to give wise wisdom when things go wrong. And so,
without getting into the knitting of the day to day.
Don't get into the nitty-gritty.
I'm going to digress briefly. One of my favorite experiences was spending time in London, my favorite city outside of New York City in the world, and sitting in the gallery at Westminster and watching a debate that Margaret Thatcher was front and center on about privatization of British public services. I then crossed the street to the High Court and watched a murder trial for the better part of half a day. And, it doesn't get any better. Theater in both cases, right?
Absolutely.
It's extraordinary. So talk to me about why we should care in an era in which my kids can dial up any number of things to watch, performances from around the world. Why is community theater relevant? Why does it make a difference? Why should we pay attention to its relative health or not?
Well, for many people, community theater is that access point that gets you in love with theater and the art of theater. So there's the part of the experience where you're the one sitting in the seat watching what's happening on stage. But when you become part of a theater group, then you get to be part of the entire experience. So you get to learn what it's like to be on stage, to be the director, to make the costumes, to do the lighting design. And then you have an even greater appreciation for the art form when you go and see a professional performance at, say, Shaw or Stratford or Mirvish. And that because you kind of get a better understanding of the nuts and bolts behind everything too.
Yep. Corrie, same question to you.
Well, I think it's a complicated answer,
Yeah.
really.
Take your time.
Because I live in a I don't live in the city. I live in
Yep.
Waterdown, which everybody knows is a growing community. When I moved there, I don't think there were 5,000 people
And
there
it's
25
exploded.
years ago.
I mean,
And it's
clearly.
exploded.
Yep.
But part of my career I spent in a new town, which was deliberately being expanded on the basis of an old town in England. And there were 6 high schools in that town. And by the time I left there, over half the population was under the age of 16. So one of the reasons I'm really interested in local theatre is the community building aspect. There's very little to do in Waterdown.
So let's talk about that. Where does community theater fit as a net contributor to community building?
I think you've got to do it from two approaches. First, you have to bring the adults in. I think you can try to bring the children in approach, and that works with some young people. But I think it's more successful if you bring the adults in and give them a successful experience than they bring their children or their grandchildren,
Right.
because they see it as a safe space with well-intentioned people doing good things, and that there's a range of experiences available for them to get involved in. It's not all about being on stage, and very few people realize how much is involved in actually putting on a play,
Right.
and how many people are involved.
Yeah.
Our last production in 2017, 2018, our first production was Pride and Prejudice. We had over 200 people involved in putting that play on.
Yeah, that's extraordinary.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about the changing makeup of audiences, the changing composition of who is performing in community theater, because before we went on the air, Corrie and I were talking about the experience that I had growing up. My grandparents were lifetime members of Players Guild, dragged us along to lots of performances, but they were classic transplanted old Brits who'd grown up with a great tradition of community theater in the old country, and that came here, and much of the audience kind of looked like that gray-haired old British set. It strikes me that that's changing as the nature and makeup of our communities is changing, and I want each of you to reflect upon how that's being managed and what it says about, again, the contribution of theater as a connector of different parts of the community.
So I'm turning 45 this year, and I've been doing community theater in the city of Hamilton since I was a teenager. And so I've seen a great shift and change in sort of who the power brokers are in those theater companies. And we talked about having some foundations with the adults that are running the companies, and then bringing the children in. But it's that sort of intergenerational thing that keeps that engine humming. So I've seen some transitions where sort of the people that were the founding members that helped create the company have been keeping it going, doing that piece of shifting your leadership and passing the baton on. Sometimes it happens well, sometimes it doesn't happen well. But with that shift of new leadership comes a new vision of what you think your audience wants to see, because you have a new generation that wants to see some new things. And what I have seen with some of the theater companies is, instead of kind of doing the same shows we've seen quite a few times, they're bringing some fresh new things from Broadway, whether they're straight plays or musicals, which is exciting because a lot of these plays have never been seen by Hamilton audiences before, unless they've been willing to trek out to New York or Toronto. And so that's exciting and fresh to see, because that's happening quite a lot more.
Corrie, you talked about your tenure in Waterdown and how much the community has changed. Can you reflect a little bit upon how your audience and their appetite for different types of performance has changed over the course of?
Well, I think as a theatre group, we started in 1972, so we've been in Waterdown for over 40 years, and I think we only missed 1 year in that whole run. And like Lyla said, it was started by many Brits or the children of British Canadians, with a strong classic British tradition of theatre. And our audience was very much that way inclined, dealing with a population coming from Waterdown and outlying regions, the city of Hamilton and Burlington and Oakville. But we're now finding our population is changing and our age profile is changing. 3 years ago, I could probably have gone to a play at Village Theatre on opening night and known by sight everybody in the audience, 175 people, and probably known half of them by name. And this year, I went to the opening night of our first play, and I knew one person.
Isn't that encouraging? And
it's very, very encouraging. I was delighted. I couldn't be more delighted that I knew nobody. And I mean that seriously. And the age profile had changed as well.
Building off what Corey's talking about, one of the other exciting things that's happening in Hamilton is the abundance of new theatre festivals. So we have the Hamilton Fringe Festival, which has actually been around for quite a while now, but there's also the Hamilton Festival just closed, which is a festival of 10-minute plays. There's the Mind Play Festival, which is a festival that has to do with mental health. So what's opening up here are not just performers and people taking scripts of plays already written by established playwrights, but new playwrights that are Hamilton born, coming up with new visions and ideas and bringing them to birth on stage and making them fully realized with lots of local talent. So that's always really exciting. And then you have some things that are a bit more experimental and also a bit more affordable too, because they make them very accessible for people who maybe don't do theater to go, oh, let's try this out and see what this is about.
Yeah, we were actually, we're on the verge of going to a commercial break, but the other point I want to talk about is that accessible point, because coming off a night in which both the Raptors and the Leafs played last night, and you'd have to take out a small mortgage to take your family to see either of them, the opportunity to get high-quality stuff that is relevant to your life in your hometown, it strikes me, is more important than ever, because inevitably there's a restrictive element to the economics of bigger entertainment events nowadays. We're going to come right back, but Lyla Miklos and Corrie Giles, we're talking about community theatre in Hamilton. I'm Terry Cooke. You're watching Hamilton's Vital Signs, and we will be right back after this short commercial break.
The 2019 Ontario Provincial Football League season is underway, and Cable 14 will be on hand to showcase multiple Hamilton Tiger Cat games from the Premier Varsity Division. The Tiger Cats welcome the visiting Ottawa Sooners for their first and only meeting this season. Coverage gets underway on Saturday, May 25th at 6 p.m. live from Ron Joyce Stadium at McMaster University. Catch the action live on Cable 14 and cable14now.com.
Hi, I'm Greg Lenko, host of Hammer Happenings on Cable 14. Join me to find out about events going on in your area, or if you just want to see my funky socks, tune in and watch and get involved in our community. If you've got an event you'd like to see featured on Hammer Happenings, make sure to contact us by visiting www.cable14.com/request-access. I know it's a lot to take down and a lot to remember, but you can do it really easily just by looking at the screen. Okay, see you soon.
And we're back. I'm Terry Cooke. You're watching Hamilton's Vital Signs. We're talking about community theatre in Hamilton with Lyla Miklos and Corrie Giles. Corrie, Village Theatre in Waterdown. I want you to tell me a little bit about the challenge of maintaining a vibrant, relevant community theatre program, because I know we've been able to support you to some extent through the Joan and Alfred Robertshaw Fund, a great couple that left a bequest to support community theatre. But obviously, part of it is putting bums in seats that will pay a nominal price for a ticket, but there are a whole bunch of other things involved in making this thing work, and you've been involved at a governance level, and I want you to just reflect upon that, how challenging it is to make this stuff work.
Well, thank you for that question, Terry. It is challenging because people are very, very busy nowadays. They lead very, very busy lives. And as we transition from an older audience to a middling age audience, and we work on trying to encourage younger Canadians to come to theatre, the sort of 20, early 30-somethings, it's a challenge to create an environment which is attractive for them to either volunteer or to actually attend the theatre itself, and to have the time with all the other competing things happening in their lives to bring their children and get their children involved. So we're, in a sense, we're in competition with everything that's going on in this very, very busy world. We're in competition for people's time. We're in competition for people's attention. We're in competition for people's dollars. And so I think one of the key things we have to do is we have to be out there, and we have to be more educators, and we also have to be more business-like in the way that we run our theatres if we're going to hope to survive into the 21st century.
Indeed. Lyla, I wanted to ask you a related question, and it really speaks to all of the attention focused on the importance of culture, art, music to Hamilton and its economic renaissance. But at the same time, the competing challenges of escalating property values, displacement, and a whole bunch of other things that, in fact, are probably making it more difficult for the arts community to thrive. So talk just broadly about the pressures that you're seeing, the challenges of staging events and performing in this community, and where are we kind of on the continuum of a healthy versus a vulnerable arts sector in Hamilton, in your opinion?
I would say art sector is always vulnerable, because sometimes I feel that the arts aren't taken as seriously as, building buildings or making vehicles or things like that. Sometimes people they don't look at it as a career or as a craft. They sometimes just see it as like this hobby thing you do. Right. So when I've been on a board of a theater company myself, I was on the board of HTI, and some of them are just very practical challenges. So let's say you have a building and you have a lease on that building, and then you have mortgage payments, and then you have insurance, and let's say something caught on fire, and then we've had that happen too. And they're back in the day when HTI years and years ago used to have like 200 to 300 members, and this was sort of the epicenter of their social circle, and it was like every Tuesday night everybody came and they were making sets and making costumes and hanging out and going places together. I would say that particular dynamic is not necessarily the dynamic of most theater companies, because the next generation who's come on board, the way we socialize with each other is very different, especially in this very digital age where things take our attention away, and we're not having as much people-to-people contact as we used to do. And I would say this is a phenomenon not unique to the art sector. It's happening in all sorts of places.
Sure it is.
So there's a challenge there of just some practical things, and then you need the numbers. If you're going to put on a big show, it's not just, the big cast you need, but you need the people to make the costumes and paint the sets and build them and work the front of house and all of that. So it takes numbers, and it takes lots of manpower and lots of volunteer hours, and people, generally speaking, I find don't take their volunteer commitments with that same sort of dedication I find even 20 years ago, where when you say you've dedicated your time to something, you're going to do it, and you see through that commitment. It's a little more wonky these days to get people to really fervently stick through things. But those who do really have a passion for it, they do stick through it. But often what I see happens is a lot of burnout, because it's sort of the same core group of people, and it's hard to get the big numbers. So. And I would say this is a common issue. Ask anyone who runs a not-for-profit. This is nothing new here. So there's all these competing factors going on, and so it makes it a challenge. And there's less and less dollars to access funding-wise from the government. So it's really about you being as savvy as possible about selling those tickets and getting donations from just your regular theater goers that are coming to see your shows.
So let's talk about affordability and access. And Corrie, I'm going to come back to you. Two questions. One is, tell us what it costs for a ticket to Village Theatre in Waterdown, and then tell us a little bit about what people can hope to see, both in terms of quality and in terms of kind of the playbill of what's coming up.
Well, our price is $25 for a ticket for 2 hours of entertainment, which is a bargain by today's standards. And if you bring 10 people, we'll drop it down to $23. But we're also concerned about our youth audience, because youth are not going to pay $25 for a ticket, and a family's not going to pay for mum and dad and a couple of kids $100 to come and see a show. It's something that they won't prioritise, I don't think. So we're moving towards selling tickets on our slack nights to high school students for $5.
It's a great idea.
Now, the execs talked about this, and hopefully this is a policy we will adopt in due course. So it's turn up at the show at 7:30. If there's space, this is for high school students only. This is to encourage the next generation to come to the theatre and get involved and excited about seeing live theatre. Hopefully this policy will help us in our community and grant access.
And what will they see coming up?
Well, they're coming up in the 2019-20 season. I'm reading off my list here because
this is the only part of the program we're going to allow you to read.
The new president, Elaine Hale, is going to shoot me if I don't get the shows right. Unexpected Guest by Agatha Christie, which is a classic murder mystery. And then we're going to, that's in the fall, and then in 2020, in April, we're doing Enchanted April by Matthew Barber.
Oh, lovely.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good.
And so moving away from too many old British farces, we still do them. They're still very popular.
Yes.
But we've just done Sylvia, and that was highly successful.
Excellent.
An experiment for us, and highly successful. And moving back to our roots of trying to offer challenging theatre from time to time in the heart of Waterdown.
Excellent. Same question on a broader Hamilton-wide scale. Tell us a little bit about what's going on.
Well, I can tell you next up.
I'm going to allow you to read this portion,
I'm going to read
too.
I have my little cheat sheet, too. So Dundas Little Theatre, the next show that they have coming up is Calendar Girls, which opens on April 26th, which I can't wait to see. It's about a whole group of senior women getting together to make a nude calendar as a fundraiser. So we'll get to see some local actors nude on stage.
Very good.
And then next up at the Players Guild is The Gentleman Clothier, which is opening on May 31st. And at HTI, they're going to have The Who's Tommy, and that's opening on May 10th. And at Theatre Aquarius, already on stage right now, is Freaky Friday, which I'm already hearing lots of really great buzz about so far. So there are things right here that we can see, but also already starting up are the Shaw and Stratford festivals, which are just a drive down the highway away, and there's lots of great shows coming up this season that I'm excited to go see there as well.
It's always a bonus living in this location, right, is the relatively easy drive to both Stratford or to Shaw and to downtown Toronto, where there's a ton of great theatre, and then you have this just remarkable cross-section of local stuff, the community theatre we're talking about. You won't believe it, but we're down to about 2.5 minutes, and as a parting thought, I'd ask each of you to simply answer this question. As citizens, how can we contribute, and what's the best way for somebody who has an interest to get involved? Corrie.
Well, we have a volunteer coordinator, and we have a marketing director as well. Our marketing director is responsible for making sure that our theatre group is well known in our local community and surrounding areas. We put out notices for small chunks of time from volunteers. Because as Lyla said earlier, getting people to volunteer for extended periods of time is very difficult when they've got to take the kids to this season. At this time of year, for example, a typical family with 14-year-old is doing last season's sport and transitioning to this season's sport all at the same time.
You're talking to a parent with 16, 14, and 12 playing multiple sports.
And then you're saying, well, come and volunteer at our theatre. It's not going to happen.
Indeed.
But if you say to them, we need 2 people to come and paint this amount of set for 2 hours on Sunday afternoon, can we have some volunteers? You get them much easier.
Yeah.
And that's why you need to go for more people. And I think in that way you build more community, because you get more people interested and you get more people knowledgeable about the theatre. As Lyla said earlier, people don't know what it takes to put on a show. They don't know it costs between $10,000 and $12,000, even $15,000 for us to put on a show. They don't know it takes $1,500 just for the rights.
Yeah, just for the rights.
In the 1 minute left.
1 minute left. Well, you know, I think back to my experience at Theatre Corrie Summer School with Lou and Pauline Zamprogna, and many of the students that were there, they didn't go on to be actors, but those skills are such good grounding skills, and you're taught such discipline about how to work with each other, how to be a team, and how to structure your time and learn how to be a public speaker. All of those skills are so interchangeable, and so along with how important the arts are in making you a fully rounded person, and also having empathy for the world around you, all of those things are help us to make better human beings and just make the world a more fascinating and wondrous place.
Great last comment. Lyla Miklos and Corrie Giles, thanks for all that you continue to do for community theatre, and thanks for the contribution you're making. I'm Terry Cooke. Unfortunately, we're out of time. You've been watching Hamilton's Vital Signs. You can, as always, follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Hope to see you again next month. Over and out.